Forget about the Razer Blade Pro, say no to the XPS 15, and welcome the ultimate mobile workstation. Hey guys, it's Subsy here, and this is the Dell Precision 5530, and in my opinion it's the best mobile workstation that you can buy today. Now let's take a quick look at the specs. So it has a 15.6 inch UHD display, a 6-core 8th gen Core i9 processor with 12 threads and 12MB cache which can turbo up to 4.8 GHz, 32GB of DDR4 RAM running at 2666 MHz, a 1TB NVMe SSD, an Nvidia Quadro P2000 graphics card with 4GB of GDDR5 memory. It has an Intel 9260 Wi-Fi card which supports Wi-Fi 5, which is basically 802.11 AC, and it supports Bluetooth 5.0. The Dell Precision 5530 has a near identical build to those of the XPS line of laptops, including the aluminium build and the soft touch carbon fibre inside. Now, the version I have here is the brushed onyx finish, and as you can see, it is a fingerprint magnet. Now, the keyboard again is very similar to the XPS line of laptops, which is a good thing, but it does feel like they have a little bit more travel. Maybe it's just a more pronounced click to the keys, but that could just be me. Now, there is a 2-stage backlight which is enough, but it's not the best. It's not RGB as some of the laptops have, and most other laptops have a few more levels of adjustment for the backlight. This only has 2. The enter key is a bit narrow, but it's 2 rows high, so that's okay, and the shift key is the correct length, so it's not too short, and the arrow keys are also in my preferred layout, so they're separate from the other keys, and I've never made a mistake pressing another key instead of an arrow key. The trackpad is a decent size, measuring in at 5 inches diagonally, but it's not as big as the others, such as the Razer Blade Pro and the MacBook Pro. They're a lot bigger. It is a glass trackpad, so it does feel great, and it does support the Windows Precision drivers. You can tap anywhere to click or physically push down to click. This is probably the only downside for the touchpad, because pushing to click around the top of the touchpad is nearly impossible, especially in the top 1 centimeter region, but the rest of the touchpad is fine. It just seems that the top is a bit stiff. On the left side of the laptop you have the inputs for the Dell proprietary power cord, a standard USB 3.0 port, a USB-C Thunderbolt 3 port which can be used for charging the laptop as well, an HDMI 2.0 port and a 3.5mm headphone jack. On the right side of the laptop you have the Kensington lock and a battery indicator LED, another USB 3.0 port and a full-size SD card reader, which is great to see. Now, the display on this is fantastic. It's got the Sharp X04 panel with a UHD resolution of 3840 by 2160. Now, it has support for 100% Adobe RGB and sRGB 100% as well, and the contrast ratio is 1500:1, and it gets very bright. Now, this is probably one of the best, if not the best, laptop screen that I've seen outside of OLED panels. Now, as a pro-grade laptop, it needs to have external display support, and it does with Thunderbolt 3. Now, when you combine the Thunderbolt 3 port with the Quadro GPU, you can have external displays running at 4K 30 bits at 120Hz, or 5K 30 bits at 60Hz, or 2 4K displays running at 30 bits each at 60Hz. So doing a Blender render on this with just the Quadro P2000 GPU, the CPU didn't heat up at all, it stayed cool and it didn't throttle the GPU or CPU. But when I did it as a CPU only task, the CPU throttled and stabilized around 2.8 GHz. It did get quite toasty, but it didn't get extremely hot, and it certainly wasn't burning me or anything like that, but it did throttle to 2.8 GHz. It has an NVMe SSD, which isn't the fastest, but it is faster than most. The sequential read speeds are about 2900 megabytes per second, and the write speeds are around 2200 megabytes per second. Now, the 4K single queue and single thread speeds are around 42 MB per second for reads and 95 MB a second for writes. Now, the speakers on this laptop are bottom mounted here and here, but they get really loud and stay really clear, and they provide a massive soundstage. Now, let's talk about the battery life. On normal usage, that's web browsing, writing documents, etc., I'd get about 5 to 7 hours of battery life, and that's with the screen at around 50% brightness. Now, if I use it with an external display and an external 4K display, I'd get about 4 hours of battery life for the same thing, and of course if you use it under load, if you're doing Blender renders or video production, then you're going to get much less, but in that scenario you'd probably have it plugged into a USB-C hub or something. Now, there are a few issues with this laptop. The bottom of the laptop gets very hot, as you would expect with a workstation laptop, and under an all-core load the CPU does throttle to, or mine stabilized around 2.8 GHz, and it's not too bad because the heat is spread around the top area, so the palm rest stays very cold still. I would say cold, but more warm in some scenarios. but the heat is basically just targeted around, I'm assuming, where the GPU and CPU are. Now the bottom mounted webcam, that's the same as the XPS line. It's an awkward angle and you don't really want to use it, but there's no other option than this. Now it hasn't been refreshed for 2019 yet, so there's no Wi-Fi 6 support. And where the Thunderbolt 3 port is, when you're running a 4K display or anything out of that, it gets very hot. That sometimes makes the keys around it, so the caps lock and the tab key, get a bit warm, but if you touch the side of the laptop, it's gonna feel pretty hot. Now, would I recommend this laptop? Well, it's not for everyone and it is expensive, but if you compare it to non-workstation premium laptop prices such as the MacBook Pro and the Razer Blade and the Dell XPS 15, it does make sense. Now, I would recommend this for anyone who wants to do professional CAD design, 3D modeling, graphic design or video production on the go and take the laptop with them and have a powerful workstation at home instead of having a desktop. So it does have its perks, but it's not for everyone. It's not for the casual gamer or just the web browser or the normal, just everyday student, and it's a very niche market, I know that. It's been Subsy here, until next time, ciao!